said to us, passengers, "I'm really sorry, but I made a wrong turn. You all need to get out," and I call the headquarters so that they can tow me back on the correct route. This funny incident set me thinking about the COVID-19. If only the world leaders, governments, international organizations were honest as the Bratislava tram driver. The mistakes were made. Own up to them. We were not prepared. We failed. Where do we go from here? The to-do list is rather long. Find the vaccine, put the world economy right on track, restore jobs, unroll welfare for the needy, deal with public debt. And last but not least, be prepared for the next black swan. One more anecdote. Do you remember Men in Black, the blockbuster comedy from 1997? It is about secret agents monitoring alien activity on Earth. There is one memorable line from the film. The Agent K, with the face of Tommy Lee Jones, says, "Imagine a giant cockroach with unlimited strength, a massive inferiority complex, and a real short temper, is tear-assing around Manhattan Island in brand new Edgar suit. That sounds like fun? No, ma'am. We at the FBI do not have a sense of humor we are aware of." End of quote. Giant cockroaches are not on top of my list of threats, but similarly, respiratory viruses were rarely mentioned in reports before January this year. We as civil society, government officials, business community need to be prepared for the black swans. It may not be aliens, but it can be terrorists or hackers. It can be enormous opportunities that the fourth industrial revolution brings. Everybody who watched Men in Black knows that there is a happy end to the story. The Earth is protected from the scum of the universe. If only real-life solutions were that simple.
Well, I think that from what I have seen, GlobeSec has convened a very impressive group of people that are subject matter experts on our most pressing global challenges. And I've really enjoyed the depth of the conversations, and I've learned a lot on the topics, and also the energy and the ambition to do something about these challenges is something that I have felt. So I think if anyone is serious about learning more and doing something about the challenges that we face globally, this is a great place to be.
Well, hello, and welcome to the next session. We're going to be talking about a more geopolitical EU amid growing instability in the neighbourhood. And I would like to introduce my distinguished panel. We've got Katarina Matanova, Deputy Director General of DG Neighbourhood and Enlargement Negotiations at the European Commission, Roland Freudenstein, Policy Director at the Wilfred Martin Centre on European Studies, which is in Brussels, Jakub Wiśniewski, Vice President for Strategy at GlobeSec, and Majlinda Bregu, the Secretary General of the Regional Cooperation Council in Sarajevo. There's been a lot of talk recently about European sovereignty and a geopolitical commission, which I suppose is to distinguish it from a political commission of the last time round. Mr. Borrell has talked about the language of power. But how realistic is this? Is this just a kind of nice slogan, or does it mean something? We're talking about growing instability in the neighborhood, but our neighborhood is pretty big, and it stretches for all the way from Belarus to Libya. So the question is, one, what can the EU do, and can it live up to these ambitions of being a geopolitical actor, or perhaps this is something that we're going to live to regret, using this expression. Well, I'm going to ask, first of all, Jakub Wisniewski from Globsec. To start us off, Jakub, it would be great if there was a geopolitical, if the EU had geopolitical clout, 27 countries all acting together to do good for Europe, for our region, and for the world. But is it realistic? What do you think?
Hello, greetings from sunny Bratislava. My view of geopolitical Europe is less sunny. And mind you, it's not a criticism of European institutions. I think that the fault lies with the member states and the mandate that we have or not have given to them. It is very common for conference panels like ours today to conclude that it is time for Europe to become geopolitical, to be a superpower at the global stage. And I think this is a very funny statement to make. Imagine that this evening I come back home and I announce to my wife and children, in case you haven't noticed, today I will become a super dad, demanding even more respect or reverence. I think it does not happen like this. You become super dad or a superpower when you are useful and or even indispensable to others. And objectively speaking, for Europe these days, it's very difficult to assume a more active role at the global stage. Why? First of all, Europe is more divided than it used to be. Many countries want to cherry pick elements from global Europe agenda. For example, say Poland and Hungary. Second reason why it is not so easy is that Europe, of course, is struggling economically and socially ever since the crisis of 2008, but also COVID will definitely not help. Italy is a good example of a country which is a shadow of its former self. A third reason is that the EU is being cash-strapped and it no longer can export stability into neighborhood through enlargement or any other instrument. Neighbors simply cannot be that easily nudged into proper behavior, like democratic standards or integrating their markets with that of the EU. The fourth reason is that the world environment has changed, where traditional European strengths have decreased in importance. Simply speaking, the world is transactional these days. Europe has fewer friends and proponents. Turkey is a good illustration. And China and Russia have chosen to be rather fierce competitors than partners. And last reason is that institutional reforms of the last 10 years have brought mixed results. I'm talking about External Action Service or any other institutional matters. It's very difficult for European Commission to conduct its role when the real power is increasingly shifting to the capitals, to the member state. Let me stop here, and maybe in some other intervention I could focus on the constructive agenda, what needs to be done and what can be salvaged from this dire situation.
Great. Well, that's a sort of rather gloomy but straightforward introduction. Majlinda, let's go to you. In recent discussions about neighbourhood and about foreign policy, there's been a lot of talk about Belarus. The foreign ministers are talking about that today in Berlin. Then that will be no doubt linked to the Eastern Mediterranean. And there's been a lot of talk about Libya, but there's been much less talk about the actual enlargement countries to the south, namely the Western Balkan Six. Do you wish that the EU was acting more geopolitically, or how do you feel this this geopolitical Europe, or does it really not mean much from where you sit?
Hello to everybody, and thank you, Jim. So hello from Tirana this time. So my office is in Sarajevo, but I'm actually in Tirana. Well, I've been thinking while reading the question a lot, and it's not the first time that we hear about the geopolitical EU or the role of the geopolitics in the region. I know that some things lead to other things, and time after time, different crises shift the attention from the Western Balkans. But we should not forget as well that before the pandemic hit everything, and even during the first months of the pandemic, we had a situation that was even more awkward and bizarre regarding the Western Balkans. And I'm referring to the postponement of the decision on the enlargement package last year, and then the new methodology that was introduced. And now I think that from that time, everybody has welcomed the new developments as kind of, let's say, with the wishful thinking that they will really push forward the process of enlargement in the region, which has really taken a long role. So I will just give you two examples. All the countries in the regions have a contractual relationship with the EU, and that contractual relationship or that contract is called Stabilization and Association Agreement. That Stabilization and Association Agreement was signed, for example, in Albania on 2006, and it has to expire in 10 years. So 2016, the date was that time decided, thinking that after 10 years, Albania would be a member state. The same goes for North Macedonia. But again, we cannot pick and choose which problems the world will face, and definitely EU has to be a global player on that. But I would really pose the question: what do Western Balkans are still waiting or want from EU? And I think that that's quite important. EU has still a lot of role to play in the Western Balkans. What Western Balkans, I think, would expect is to have in front of them a more resilient and assertive EU member states. I'm not referring to the EU Commission or the two EU institutions who are our main partners in this journey. I'm referring to the member states, to their decision making, to sometimes their local policies and national agendas that do not really leave room to think that Western Balkans outside EU, it will not really benefit the EU, it will only harm EU. So Western Balkans do expect a more competitive EU, both on political and economic perspective. We do expect to break down the barriers that can help Western Balkans to move on and not stagnate. Cooperation in the region has become a reality. 59% of the citizens support the EU membership of their countries. EU has a lot of majority in the region. It's the main trading partner for 72.8%. It's let's say the main contributor in terms of FDIs. It's the main contributor in helping the countries to face challenges such as that of COVID-19, with the recovery package of 3.3 billion that was approved in springtime. So there is a lot of room for EU to play its high role in the region. And I hope as well that some of the agendas that started even during the pandemic among the region and among the countries in the region. And I will go back and mention that Green Lanes initiative that was too much appreciated. This might be a starting point to bring the region closer to the EU, to bring the region and make it be part of the European supply chains. It will help the business to develop business and to improve with each other. It will help the real connectivity in the region. It will help the transfer of know-how and technology in the region. So that it will mean that there will be less threats on the economic situation in the Balkans, which is a big problem, less threats on people leaving massively the Balkans. And you know that almost 1 in 4 people, young people, are eager to leave their home countries. This will mean that the region's security, I mean Western Balkans, will always be safer. So there is still a lot that I think can happen.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to come back to you because, I'm going to go on to Roland now. But I have to say that if I have to think of one thing about the EU and Western Balkans over this pandemic period. You know, what I remember is the president of Serbia saying that the EU was useless and that Serbia's real friend was China, and posters in Belgrade saying, thank you, brother Xi. So it may be that the EU is the biggest contributor, but the question is perhaps people don't realize that.
Do you want me to answer?
Go.
I think Tim disappeared. So we are on our own.
Yes.
Maybe Roland, you could take over.
I'll take over.
Maybe.
Thank you.
Maybe Roland, before you take over, Roland, maybe before you take over, just to quickly react on this last point of Tim, so it doesn't leave stay hanging about President Vučić praising President Xi for the greatest help.
Okay, but be quick because it's Roland's turn.
Okay, I'll very quickly react. I'll very quickly react to it. That indeed, at the beginning, Europe had a sneeze or a little bit of yawn at the beginning, where borders were closing, etc. And I think that fairly rapidly we actually got our act together and realized that not only Europe needs to help each other among the member states, but needs to offer a helping hand to our friends in the Balkans, in the neighborhood, whether southern or western neighborhood, eastern neighborhood, and also beyond. And under Team Europe branding, actually by mid-April, we put together together with member states, EU institutions, and EU financial institutions, 25 billion euro package of support. But I'm not mentioning it for the money, but to address the point, Tim, that you raised with Majlinda, really for the first time in a very systematic way, we realized it's not only about the money we put, but the communication that needs to go with it. Because the amount of disinformation that there was at the beginning, coming from China, coming from Russia, coming from all sorts of places, was necessary to address very head on. And this is, we started communicating, and if you pose the question now in Serbia or anywhere else, and we have the data to support that, everybody would say that the EU was the one quickest to respond and actually deliver the goods.
Great. Okay, we'll come back to you. But Roland, can I come back to my question? Is a geopolitical Europe a useful expression? I mean, are we going to see a sort of a more muscular Europe, which is going to impose its will in the Eastern Mediterranean and Belarus and Libya and so forth? Or could that be a problematic expression? What do you think?
Yes, it could. Well, first of all, hello, Tim. Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me. And, hello from a kind of sunny and rainy Brussels at the same time, which kind of reflects probably the situation of Europe that we're talking about here. So, to your question, Tim, I have a huge problem with the term geopolitics and geopolitical. Very often it's used basically as code for power politics. And yes, of course, we have to build some more muscles, and we have to work on our willingness to use the muscles, so language won't be enough. But the other implication of geopolitical, we're now seeing in Belarus, where the self-appointed realists claim that there are some geopolitical, like laws of gravity, that seem to indicate that neighbors of Russia cannot determine their own future, as far as their political system is concerned, as far as, sending authoritarian kleptocrats to hell, and of course also as far as their international allegiance and their alliances are concerned. So I'd be really, really careful with using the word geopolitics, because it somehow indicates that some nations cannot choose their own fate, cannot choose their own future, because they happen to be neighbors of this or that other nation, and those are usually China and Russia recently, of course. So this is my objection to the word geopolitical. But if it's just meant as a code word for the EU needs to work on its capabilities and its willingness to use force as one component of achieving its goals, then I'm all in favor. But I totally share Jakub's skepticism when he talked about the limits to Europe's declared intention in the last 10 years to become a bigger global player and to become more geopolitical in that sense. So I think in order to achieve our goals, we also need allies, and that's a key aspect I would like to throw into this debate. Europe will never be able alone to become a global player. We can only do so with allies, and that means other democracies around the globe. And of course, that's countries like Canada, Australia, but also India and Japan. And I think we have very good chances that after 3rd of November in the United States, Europe will actually be able to renew the transatlantic alliance, which is and remains key to everything Europe wants to achieve globally.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Well, we're going to come back to you, Katerina. You've heard a lot of skepticism there. There's been this clear transactional element when it comes to sort of Belarus and the Eastern Mediterranean, with the Greeks and the Cypriots being kind of unwilling to back tougher action on Belarus and what they want in the Eastern Mediterranean. Surely that's just going to sort of thing is just going to the lowest common denominator, which will mean not much.
Well, first of all, thanks a lot for inviting me. It's great to be virtually even with Globsec again, and in my hometown of Bratislava, which is indeed sunny. Few reflections. First of all, I very much understand the skepticism with which Jakub started and Roland echoed about the ability of the EU of acting together. I mean, there is the perpetual question there: how much power the member states are willing to cede in the foreign policy arena for the EU to have a more efficient and faster decision-making process. And this question is with us in reaching our geopolitical ambitions, and this is also a response to you, Tim. I would not write off today at this hour what is going to happen with Belarus, what is going to happen with the Eastern Mediterranean, because the one thing to understand about Europe is that it is a process-driven, process-based decision-making, consensus-making entity. So this is something that needs to gel. It needs to grow, and eventually, in many cases, maybe there are exceptions, we reach the right decisions. But it's not something that happens with a snap of fingers, because it's a multi-stakeholder decision making. So I think that it's important to see what is happening now in the international arena compared to what was doable or what was happening on the EU side some time ago. You look at the PESCO discussions and you look at the discussions on cooperation in the defense arena, and things that were unimaginable some years ago are happening now. It's very much the same thing with the economic issues. The fact that the EU is now looking through national budgets before they are submitted to national parliaments was unimaginable before the crisis. So I think that there is always sort of a push factor through various crises that makes the integration more deeper and more efficient. And the two big push factors right now is the loss of the loss of the US security umbrella. You know, I'm sure that there would be changes, as Roland mentioned, in a few months, but whether we would go to status quo ante, it's not quite clear. So the fact that we are on the left alone or left with fewer allies in defending the multilateral order is something that is giving the EU the push to be more cohesive in the international arena. And the second one is the assertive nationalism of China. And so trying to figure out how to navigate that. And the third one, perhaps not as important as these two, but the third one, when we talk about the neighborhood, is very important, is Russia and the behavior of Russia. So I think that these are the push factors that are making Europe more cohesive, also on the international stage, but we are not there yet. So I mean, I share the skepticism, but I see developments and possibilities, and I will use two examples to demonstrate that. One, we already discussed enlargement. I mean, after the pause and the really sort of a major slowdown that happened in the previous EU election cycle, I think that the recommitment to enlargement as a realistic prospect is now making its impact on the region, as Majlinda was also mentioning. So I think that this, as one of the key success policies of the EU, is back on the agenda. I think it was actually a very instructive hiccup on the way, which was the pause on Albania, North Macedonia at first. And what was important was the really strong reaction of the other member states, pushing the ones that did not want to go through with it into accepting enlargement for the future. So I think that it was a very instructive moment that happened last fall with a positive outcome. And the second example I want to use is the role that the EU has played in Ukraine on the reform front. I'm not talking about the Minsk process, but about the stabilizing and sticking with Ukraine through thin and thick on the reform agenda, where the EU has become the federator, essentially, of the international support, not only from the member states, but also from other donors, and sort of speaking, managing the process in a way that the international community speaks with one voice and is able to continue supporting Ukraine. So I will leave it at that, just as these two examples. Not perfect, not a linear process, but I think we're getting there.
Okay, but I'm going to suggest that being a geopolitical Europe means basically leaving Belarus to its fate and leaving Belarus firmly under the thumb of Moscow. I mean, I've heard that referred to as this sort of a kind of Armenian solution that basically, you know, we can give a little bit here and there, but it's going to remain firm under Moscow's thumb, whether people there like it or not. And that's what geopolitics means for Belarus. I don't know whether anyone would like to pick that up.
Yeah, could I?
Go ahead, Rob.
Look,
yeah, go ahead.
Tim, you hit the nail on the head. Absolutely. This is what some people are saying. I mean, they're not using the same words that you did. They would never say we're leaving the Belarusians to their fate. No, what they're saying is we're looking reality in the face. We are seeing geopolitical facts. And so Putin is never going to permit the Belarusians to choose their own future. That's what these people are saying. And I think one has to severely object to this, because it's not only morally despicable, it is not only contrary to all the values that Europe is built on, but it's also short-sighted and unrealistic. Because, I mean, what we've seen in in Belarusians waking up and rising to the challenge just in the last 3 weeks, I think has been totally amazing. And that should tell us that we would seriously put ourselves on the wrong side of history if we now gave even the impression of negotiating the future of Belarus with Putin. You know, I mean, we're at the moment our leaders are falling over themselves in talking to Putin about Belarus. Well, you know, I mean, talking is good. There's nothing wrong with talking. They should clearly communicate that here, these are our red lines. If you cross those red lines, there will be consequences. You know, sanctions. We will refuse to deal with Lukashenko if you keep him in power beyond September 10th. And so on and so on. So, you know, whereas if we only give the impression that we're telling Putin, look, you know, I mean, if you just keep your tanks out of Belarus, we'll totally agree to this so-called Armenian solution. In other words, Belarus will remain in the Eurasian Economic Union. Belarus will never join the EU or NATO, even in the far-flung future. I mean, look, these are things for the Belarusian citizens to determine, and not for Mr. Putin. And it's not for us to even appear to be negotiating with him about this.
Yes, fine, but I mean, you know, I can only kind of follow that with the words Hong Kong and China. And is there anything we can or could or should have done about Hong Kong? Would somebody like to pick that up?
Well, I think that very. Okay, you jump in or I jump in?
Maybe I follow.
No, I just want to echo. I just want to echo what President von der Leyen said, and which picks up on what Roland just mentioned. That it's I actually don't see the call by the Belarusian public for geopolitical changes. What I see is yearning by huge portion of the Belarusian society for a regime that allows free and fair elections, that allows freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, human rights, etc. And I think that the EU is very much there to support what the Belarusian citizens want. Let's not forget, when we are talking about Armenian solution, yes, Armenia continues to be member of the Eurasian community, but there's been a regime change in Armenia, and so what we very much would like to do and are offering to Mr. Lukashenko is support for. We are calling for national dialogue on the future of the country. We are supporting the civil society. We are supporting the media. We just put together a fund or contributed significantly to a fund for the victims of violence. And we very much subscribe to the notion that it should be Belarusian citizens that choose the future of the country and not someone else.
I suppose that in the Commission you must be breathing a sigh of relief that they're not flying EU or European flags, because then it would make it much more difficult, a sort of a Ukraine redux, perhaps. Okay, well, Jakub, you wanted to come in here. Well, yeah, well, Jakub and then Roland, and then we've got a live question.
Right. I would not like to bore you with my reflections any longer in this matter, because I fully agree with my predecessors. Only bastards and idiots actually would like to have concerts of powers talking about the fate of Belarusians without Belarusians over the heads of them with Russia. So I think we are clear on that. Of course, the devil lies in the details, and my memory goes back to the early 80s when Poland was in a very difficult spot, and the solidarity movement under Lech Wałęsa created some options for reform, but this regime change was not possible, and hands of people, well-meaning people in the West were tied. So sometimes it's a very long haul. Sometimes it's about making all these little inauspicious, almost boring things that Katarina is talking about, like helping with the media, helping with civil society. And also, we need to understand that we must not commit the mistakes that the other side is doing, which means that we cannot pretend that we know better the future of Belarusians than the Belarusians themselves. This is a society which has a deep link to Russia. And we have to also understand that there are cultural links, that there are linguistic links, and this is with anybody who plans the Belarusian future already in the European Union or NATO should a little bit pause and think twice, because this is much more complicated and much more longer haul.
Okay, so Jakub, so I'm going to stop you there. Roland, very quickly, because then we've got a live question.
Yeah, about those EU flags, you know, let's face it, the European Union, for many people in Eastern Europe, has become the formula for democracy and the rule of law. I mean, why should we be happy or unhappy about some people flying EU flags or not flying EU flags? If they do so, they are trying to say that this is our preferred way to become a modern, normal, liberal, democratic European country with a functioning market economy and with as little corruption as possible. That's what they want to say. And you know, Putin's conspiracy theories and Lukashenko's conspiracy theories about this whole thing that's happening in Belarus being a machination of the West and the CIA and who have you. I mean, this is going on already, whether they're flying EU flags or not. So Tim, to respond to your sigh of relief theory, I don't think there is any sigh of relief about people flying EU flags or not. All we want here in Brussels is for Belarusians to be able to determine their fate. And within our modest, limited possibilities, I think we will and we are doing everything we can to help them in this.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, now we've got our first live question.
Thank you very much for connecting me. My name is Cornelia Baciu, and I'm connecting actually directly from the ECPR conference, which is the largest gathering of political scientists in Europe. So I do hope that my question is not going to be too theoretical, but I think it is important to address when we talk about mega trends. So to make the connection to the meta theme of this session, the question is, and which I would like to pose to you, what is your prediction about the role of the EU in the future world order? So in other words, how do you see Europe in, let's say, 2050? Do you see Europe as a big power, as a small power, as a no power, or as a hegemon? And I was wondering what would be the advantages and the disadvantages of the EU being a hegemon in the future world order? That is my question. Thank you very much.
Great. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask that's the type of question which, from political scientists, which we could probably talk about for the next week or so. But we really don't have very much time. Majlinda, we haven't heard from you again, so I'm going to come straight to you. The EU in 2050.
Well, listening now the discussion about all the words and which is right on the language of power spoken for so long in Belarus. I was thinking that the language of power is impeccably spoken in Western Balkans as well. Since years, I would say. And I was again thinking a bit, and I hope that the reaction or the attention of EU and other global players in the region as well, as it happens time after time, will not be quite high only when a crisis appears to be quite big and not and can be handled, because the situation in the region has changed a lot. So, and if I can just pick a bit on this concept of geopolitical narrative on Western Balkans. I think that there is a change in the Western Balkans as well, because until some years ago, said poorly, external actors had a stronger say. But now nothing can be dictated or planned without considering that respective leaderships are ready, keen to be asked and then heard of. So the active actors in shaping the interest of geopolitical actors in their favor will have as well to hear a lot and then expect even the reaction from the local elites in the region. Which makes me...
Majlinda, sorry to interrupt. The question's about 2050. Tell us briefly what the EU going to be like in 2050.
Yes, so and that makes me think on the 2050. Well, 2050, it's a long way forward. I hope that before the 2050, we will have Western Balkans and part of the EU. So all of the countries being members of the EU. And for all the reasons that I mentioned above, this is of utmost importance. But, well, 2050, it's too far from now. So I wouldn't really go on projecting a future in 30 years. 20 has already passed for the region. And I do expect and I hope that the situation will start to change immediately. If there is no reaction now on, then on 2050, two scenarios might be in place. First, we might have Western Balkans joining the EU just in terms of papers, because people would have joined the EU already by leaving one by one. And then I might even imagine one of your major concerns being published and said and being present everywhere, that Western Balkans will be shrinker in number. And that might really be a big problem. I don't think that will really help not even the Western Balkans, the depopulation of this region, and it won't really give any better shape to EU.
All right, Katerina.
Yes.
2050. Katerina, 2050, very briefly. What's going to be like in 2050? Will the EU still exist, or will it be a hegemon, as we were asked? But briefly, if 2050 is too far ahead, you can reduce it to maybe 2035.
Well, let me say this: the EU will definitely be around, and considering that EU always grows through crises and makes leaps forward through crises, and looking at the world today, I do expect many crises coming along. So the EU will be internally strengthening through that process. So 2050, EU will be alive and kicking. I would say an important power. I wouldn't necessarily go as far as calling it hegemon, but definitely will be around.
Great. Roland, hegemon, not existing, where are we going to be in 2050?
We'll be part of a global alliance of democracies. We'll have solved the rule of law problems in the European Union itself, and we'll be discussing really important things, such as, whether we need to address the spiritual needs of artificial intelligence machines, or the colonization of planet Mars.
Great. Okay. Jakub?
I just want to say that I exclude the possibility of the European Union not existing. I think that it makes my life worthwhile to fight for the big status of Europe on the global stage. I believe in some areas we are destined to succeed. For example, the digital sphere, the digital revolution, for example, climate change, global trade, democracy, multilateralism. These are all areas where European strengths are already here today.
Thank you very much. Well, really, this is, I kind of feel we've just begun, and unfortunately it is already 2:45 in Bratislava. So unfortunately, we've already amazingly come to an end of this session. So I would like to say thank you very much to all of my panelists. Thank you very much to everybody who's been listening. And I'd like to refer you to the next session, which is called pushing back against state capture. And I'm sorry, we've really just started this topic. Maybe Globsec can have a whole few days devoted to this. That would be useful, I think. Jakub, if you've got that down, we could do a whole few days on the future of Europe.
Yes.
So
yes.
Thank you very
well
much
noted.
indeed to everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Globsec Tatra Summit drives discussions that shape the future of Europe.
Uncertainty. You have Brexit, you have the trade wars.
The climate change has become the part of financial risk.
Making Europe green, making Europe strong, and keep Europe united. You can translate this in